So, hi everyone, this is Gabbi, and before I go into the final day of this 7-day challenge, I'm going to give you a little bit of an idea as to what next. So, I'm just going to check that this is on and working because I can't see any signs of it so far. Okay, let's check. Yes, it's on. Okay, great. So, what next? We've done the 7-day challenge, and I'm going to go through day 7. It's about rest, and it's quite interesting. I was doing a bit of research today about rest, so I wanted to share that with you. So um, this week, I've learned that rest gives us a space to reflect on each of the days, empowerment, small wins, shifting states, gratitude, pausing and play. And it is quite a challenge to do a 7-day challenge and make sure that you are focused, you know what it is you want to talk about, what you want to cover. And also, because my brain has been focused on this, it's also been thinking about other things that sit around it. So let's cover day 7, but I will go more into what next at the end of this. Okay, so day 7 is permission to rest. Okay, so here at day 7 and the close of the 7-day challenge, we've explored gratitude, fire, pause, and play. And today we close with one of the most powerful of all practices, rest. Not forced rest, not guilty rest, and true intentional permission to rest kind of rest. Because rest isn't weakness, rest is strength, and rest allows everything else to grow. So historically, rest, it isn't just a personal thing. We think it is, but it's also political and cultural. If we look back at history in the time of the feudal system in the Middle Ages, ordinary people like me had no choice but about work or rest. Life was the service to the Lord, the land, or the church. The serfs or the peasants worked endlessly with little freedom. But when something began to shift after the peasants' revolt and Black Death, the whole population was reduced. Workers started to be able to demand wages, fairer conditions, and even time off. Slowly, the idea of the common man and common woman having rights began to emerge. Even Sunday as a day of rest came through the centuries of people pushing back against endless labour. What we now take for granted, that we deserve rest, was actually fought for. So when you rest, you're not just doing something personal, you're reclaiming something your ancestors once struggled for. Rest is not laziness, it's legacy, it's freedom. For me, rest used to feel like wasted time, especially when I was pushing towards goals and I thought I just had to keep going. But when I didn't rest, I burnt out. I hit walls of exhaustion and frustration and found myself going through these endless loops. Now I see rest differently. Travel isn't just about moving, it's about stopping, like being in a quiet hotel room, allowing yourself to breathe, to be, and to recharge. So when I go on my next trip, I'll also be thinking about how the land itself holds stories of toil, power, and rest, and how those legacies live in us today. And that really got sparked and activated when I was in Wales when I took that trip, because I started diving deep into the history of each of those areas of Portishead, Clifton, and Clevedon, and Bristol, how, its whole economy was founded on trade over the last few hundred years, and in particular, some of the big manor houses on the slave trade. And then how the Chartists were the people that started standing up to the government and had revolts, and they started to influence people around different parts of the UK, especially when we had the printing press and news. They had more freedom in terms of what we could share in our local communities. So there's so much behind the way that we think today, how we act, and the patterns that weave through, that I'm going to share a little bit more about. So the affirmation for this is: rest renews my power. I rest without guilt. So many women I've come into contact with really struggle with this idea of stopping and having some time to themselves. And I'm not saying men don't, it just that it so happens that for many years, for 20 years, women or young people were 90%, 95% of my client group. So the tarot, to go with this now, interestingly, the tarot cards that go with this whole series have now completely disappeared. And I've no idea, I might have to look around the van, because I was actually playing with these cards with my granddaughter yesterday as part of the Fun and Curiosity Day. And so I might just have to find another card, and I've no idea which one relates to this. But it's the Four of Swords, and the Four of Swords shows a warrior resting. And actually, when I was at the cathedral in St. David's in Wales, there was lots of those stone tombs where you'd see someone lay back like that, look very peaceful. So they are often depicted in the tarot card as resting, not dead, not defeated, but gathering strength. It reminds us that rest is preparation for the next chapter. So sometimes when we've gone through something really arduous, really challenging times, we can feel exhausted and not feel like we've got the energy or the motivation to do anything. And that's sometimes the body is signaling us to get the right level of rest so that when opportunities come, we've got the strength and the ability to move forward. So it's thinking about that in its value in the midst of struggle, and stillness is sacred. So like the people of history who push back against endless labor, we too reclaim rest as a radical act of strength. So the journal prompts for this is: where do I resist rest and why? How might rest actually support my goals? And what guilt do I carry about stopping, and how can I let it go? So try and give yourself at least a couple of times a week, 20 minutes of intentional rest. No phone, no distractions, just you and stillness. And tonight, reflect on: how did it feel to rest without guilt? And as we close this 7-day challenge, I want you to remember that growth isn't about constant pushing. In fact, we're meant to surrender and let things flow. But that's something that took me a long time to wrap my head around. It's about balance. It's about fire and pause, play and rest, action and reflection. And especially when you get on a scooter and are running up and down the road with your 4-year-old granddaughter. Today I was really tired this morning. So as I prepare for my next trip, I'll be asking, what do the lands teach us about freedom, power and legacy? What stories are still carried in the soil, in the buildings and in the people, in our DNA, in our memories, in the social constructs of our beliefs and value system? And for you, I hope you take this forward with truth. You're allowed to rest, not just because it helps you grow, but because it's your right. Rest is freedom, rest is power, and rest is letting us dream the new world into being. The more you rest, the more you can visualize, you can focus on the things that, you know, may light you up, or the dreams that you have that you want to bring into fruition. And many of us didn't, our ancestors just didn't have the time, didn't have the ability to stop, think and reflect. So the way that we think about life has massively changed, especially in the last, I'd say, 3 decades. So when you're on, the other way to think about it is if you're close to a personal challenge on a personal, ancestral or societal level, then it's worth thinking about how some of those challenges or patterns that emerge that you're struggling through could have been the patterns and the challenges that your ancestors fought, but they couldn't complete them, they couldn't deal with them, or they didn't have things in place that would help them shift those things forward. So changing spaces through the lens is my new project, which will be gathering these different facets and the layers that have influenced the whole of my life without realizing it. I'll just touch on it a little bit. in terms of religion, I wasn't brought up religious. My mum rejected religion after being brought up in a very religious family. And I was reading today about, when Catholicism came through, and then the Protestant religion then was brought through, and all of the struggles between the two religions was very much alive in my mum's thinking when she had us. And our ideas about spirituality and how politics feeds into every aspect of our life, and how, you know, for a long time, kings were the ones that were able to make the decisions about what happened everywhere. And we certainly know that after 1066, when the land was divided, people were given favour in terms of having big pieces of land so that they continued to serve the king. But eventually, people started to stand up and say, the king is not above the law, and we also need to be part of the decision making, which is where our modern political system came from. If you really think about, we've got the House of Lords, the people who owned land, and we've got the House of Commons, which were people who still had money but weren't at that higher tier of society. And our system and our way of thinking is still massively influenced by these old rituals and way of thinking about people on a deeper layer. So bear with me as I just give you a hint of what comes next. So, like I said, 7 days of a challenge to focus, to commit, to do something that can be the introduction or the basics, the baseline of empowerment. And empowerment is about having that capacity to really think about all these different facets of your life. Empowerment's not just about this personal power. It's much bigger than that. It is the system. It's where you sit in the system, your faith, your race, class, gender, everything that affects your capacity to earn money, to have a family, and to live where you live. So rest, like I said, is not about stopping. It's about integration. It's about a pause that allows us to step back and see the bigger picture. And I've been weaving in and out of this bigger picture ever since I was a kid. But it was when I started training as a therapist and reading up on religion and philosophy and a little bit of the politics. But I got deeper into the politics when I started researching what the history of education was, and how we were educated differently in the state schools than in the grammar and the private schools, and how mental health and the history of mental health has massively shaped the language that we use today and the way that we view people through a lens, whereas 100 years ago you could get locked up for just thinking differently. So thinking differently was one thing, but doing differently, or even standing up to the landlords or the coal factory owners, or wanting better pay, could actually elicit a very aggressive response from the government. And I know that when I was reading about the Chartists in Newport, who I think it was 1837, who had a revolt and started standing up and saying, we need to see these things in place. And they had several things on that charter that they wanted to implement. And actually, many of those did get implemented. But at the same time, many of them were shot, and those that weren't shot were transported as part of what the UK used to do years ago. If your face didn't fit or you misbehaved, you could get carted off to a completely different country on the other side of the world. So my next journey is I'm going to rest for a couple of days and work on some of the background of what I'm about to prepare for my next trip, looking at all of these aspects like London, the city of power, economics and world trade, a place where decisions are made about our life, and then areas like Cambridge where science and politics and the seat of academic life sits. And that a reminder for centuries that education wasn't for all of us. It was for the ruling classes to train them how to manage their estates, their wealth, their workers. Ordinary people didn't have that privilege. And we think these days we've got the privilege, but there's a lot of information about how we live, move forward, manage money that we've never had access to. So this is about spending time not just resting, but allowing yourself to come into contact with information and ideas that can eventually maybe help you break free and create the life that you love. So rest is more than just sitting down after a hard day. This is about really opening up to wider ways of thinking that may make all the difference between, now and where you move to next. So I look forward, I've got a couple of videos lined up over the next few days to tell you more about the trip. And I look forward to either getting your comments or, people joining me on this journey. I think it's going to be interesting. I have no idea what the weather's going to be like. It's going to be a mixture of campsites, camper van, hotels, and possibly even ferry trips, and lots of driving over bridges, because I actually quite like bridges, as I go and explore many of the different places on this journey. And I was reading up a lot of history this week, so it's going to become more alive as part of my experience, going right back to the Roman influence for 400 years in the UK, then the Normans and the kings and the queens and the land and how it's divided, and the wars, and how it was very difficult to get past Hadrian's Wall in Scotland. And so it's going to be an interesting experience, actually, when I eventually get to Scotland. So for now, thank you for joining me on the 7-day challenge. For those of you, like I said, if you've done the 7-day challenge, do contact me. Interesting. I just pulled the Hanged Man. I think we had that one yesterday as well. But this is actually from, because I can't find the tarot that I had yesterday. This is actually from the Good Tarot. And this one reads a little bit differently, so hopefully I can see it in the light. So let's see what the Hanged Man says in here. I need to use the light of my phone because it's gone so dark again. Okay, so the Hanged Man. Surrender. Sacrifice and surrender are necessary at times like this. Nothing in life is free. Well, we know that, don't we? And nor does everything happen according to my timetable. When this card appears, I'm reminded that a delay is in my best interest, and that until all the elements are in place, we're meant to surrender to the greater will for the highest good of all. Time for you to let go of your attachment, excuse me, to how you thought things had to be. You are called to surrender and wait and see how things play out. That was fascinating, because out of 70 odd cards that I was shuffling a lot, that one came out. So clearly that is the message for today. And in this journey for me, this focus on doing the 7-day challenge and coming up with some topics that I felt could create the foundation for you if you wanted to carry on with the challenge or do my 30-day challenge, and connect you with the way in which I deliver this information, with the journal prompts, with the tarot cards, the affirmations, because these are all different facets through, bear with me. Right, back on green. So these are different facets, really, that run through all the different things I do. Because on a serious note, anyone who's struggling with any mental health issues, what we know in psychiatry, and a lot of psychiatrists are recommending now, is that people are able to do a variety of things to support their well-being, and that's through learning how to breathe properly, practicing mindfulness, slowing down, taking a pause, having a rest, but also starting to focus on some of the things that make you feel good, that light up your life, that you're personally interested in. So whether that is, I've got a friend who's got motorbike who absolutely loves riding on the track. I've got another friend who also likes to travel. I've got another friend who really likes cooking, one that looks after a lot of dogs. And it's all of those different things that they bring into their life that makes them feel really good. And not all of them cost money. And it's the moment you start to place a focus on say having a routine, like this has become a routine if it's a 7-day challenge, the more your brain will now naturally gear you towards the information, the synchronicities, or the things that happen. And actually, I had a couple of synchronicities yesterday I'll share with you. Because sometimes when you're really focused on what is important, and you're really focused on just generally, it's not like the law of attraction where you think of something and you kind of sit there and hope that it comes through. But on my way to see my granddaughter, I often stop at one of the retail parts near Reading, and I have a look in TK Maxx and see what they've got going on. And I might go and get a coffee, something like that. And we've dropped quite a few of the plates in our dinner set over the last few months, and I've not been replacing them because I've been on the road a lot. So it got to the stage where I had to pull the plastic plates out of the camper van the other day. So I was looking at the plates in TK Maxx, and they had all sorts of different designs, but they never had in more than one or two of one design. But they had a load of these white plates, and I thought I'll get them next time. Anyway, I gets to my son's house, and his partner is starting to clear out. They're going to move, and they're starting to clear out, sell, and give to charity shops a lot of the stuff they've got. And you know what it's like when you've got small children, is you do collect. You collect so many clothes because they grow so quick, and the baby stuff and the toys. Anyway, I was saying to her, that I need to get some plates, and I didn't know what to get. And she said, "Oh, we've got loads of plates we want to give out, and wine glasses and glasses and all of that." I was like, "Oh, brilliant." Anyway, I go into the dining room, and there's a big pile of white plates, white bowls and glasses, exactly like the white plates and white bowls I was looking at in CK Maxx. She was throwing them out, and I needed to inherit some, and there you go. And I hadn't texted her or anything because we don't even really talk about that stuff. I just go out and start playing with my granddaughter normally. So yeah, that was one of the synchronicities, and synchronicities are more likely to occur when you're not when you're aware of them, or you can give yourself some space to really think about what is it that I really want to focus on this week and make happen. So you can test that out for yourself. You can say, how many red cars will I see this week? How many birds will fly over my house? Or lately, I think I've said too many times how noisy it is around here. And this morning, on a Sunday morning, I was woken up by, it's not even like drilling. They were digging up the road, and it was a noise that was just unbearable. And I don't know how these guys dig up roads with that level of noise. I know they've got the noise cancelling earphones on, and so I had to get up very early and put my headphones on and pray that that wasn't going to last too long. So yeah, there's all sorts of magical things that can happen when you set out on a journey of exploration and being open to seeing what happens when you actually set your mind on some very simple things that serve you, that serve how you feel, your needs. And like I said, doing something that you love doing, getting enough rest, making sure you're eating the adequate food and nutrition, and just making sure all rounded that you're starting to move out of any chaos, challenges, drama, and situations that really just impact you, because that interferes. It's like static in your energy field, and it just interferes with even the abundance and the beautiful things that can come in your direction. But when you choose a program, something to focus on every day, whether that's your gym program, swimming, going walking, doing my program, when you focus on something every day that's about you leveling up, you will start to see results. So if you get any results after this, something magical happens in the week, leave some comments or email me on melgbb555@hotmail.com. And I look forward to seeing you next. Like I said last night, I'm going to have some bonus sessions. No idea what next, because I'm about to prep for the trip that I will be sharing on here.